All right, this is going to be a video response or an address, I guess, directly to Alexandra Blue. If you see me looking down occasionally, it's because the dog has decided to lay himself right at my feet. He's a 120-pound lab Great Dane cross, so that sometimes requires my attention when he moves around. Alexandra, if I refer to you directly and then sort of indirectly throughout this video, I apologize. It's going to be partially because I've been engaged with my own subscribers discussing you and John the Other in a previous video, and I didn't really mean to make a direct response video until now. So if I sort of, waver back between those two positions, I apologize. I watched John the Other's video and I watched your original video, and I've now watched your response video to your own video, I guess response to comments. And I have some observations to make. I made a video mostly addressing John the Other's video and you in that video. And some of my subscribers have said, hey, you should take note. She's made a follow-up video that has tempered her position. And so I appreciate everyone directing me, as always, to this new material. There are a couple of observations that I wanted to make. First of all, I very much appreciate that you've had some introspection, some reflection, and have tempered your position on a few things. You've taken the criticism about using the word creepy to describe men, and it seems to me that you've almost reversed your use of whatever the self-descriptive label is that you are going to use. You say that you still hold to the same principles, but the term feminism has sort of lost its efficacy, and I would semi-applaud that, at least in terms of reflecting on what's useful. My biggest criticism, if I was going to level one, well, first, before I get to any criticisms, one more kudo, and I would say, and that is in her response video, Alexandra Blue relates an experience where a friend of hers tried to start a men's rights group in college, I believe it was, and that was shut down by the student directive or whatever, and that she thought that was a bad thing. And I would say, she recognized the inherent contradiction in a group that advocates for rights, not allowing someone else to have their own rights, their rights to have their own discussion. So kudos for that. I mean, it sounds to me like maybe you could have been a little more active if you really believed that was an injustice on behalf of your friend, if not on behalf of men. But this is a big criticism that a lot of men have of feminists who try to shut down men's rights advocacy, or to say that things like misandry doesn't exist, or that men's rights are already looked after and that sort of thing. These are all extremely unreasonable positions. And my catchphrase, or single word catchphrase for 2015, is going to be reasonableness. And so I'm looking for reasonableness in anything like that. Now, onto the main criticism I would have is not that much of a direct criticism of you. I do appreciate that you've tempered your position and that you've recognized. I think reflection and introspection are really positive things to engage in, and I really commend you for doing that. Now the puppy's whining. My biggest criticism would be, it seems to me that you have made your original video, Dear Man, I think it was called, private. And I really wish you hadn't done that. And I understand that you've taken a lot of criticism, and I see that you've made another video reading some of the mean comments, which are obviously terrible. That trolling stuff is awful. I mean, engage. I don't think there's that much use to it. But I really wish you'd left that video up, and for several reasons. One is, in your follow-up video, you said you want to continue this conversation, but it's kind of hard to continue a conversation that you've erased, right, partially. The other thing is, I don't know, on my channel I've made mistakes, and I've made videos where I correct those mistakes, and some of them have been large, some of them have been small, but I've never removed the original video because I feel like I think it's instructive for everyone to not sort of erase the past, and to let your freak flag fly. Let your mistakes stand on the record. Paxton, come on, buddy. Sorry. Go to your bed. He's not at my feet anymore. I think it's a good idea just to let your mistakes stand. And then again, if you're interested in continuing a conversation, then the original part of that conversation is still there on the record, regardless of whether you're ashamed of it or how proud you are of it or how often you misspoke. I think it says a lot for your character if you have a video like that and then you have a follow-up video where you correct yourself and where you show that you are suggestible to criticism and things like that, and introspection, reflection. It shows your character. It doesn't mean, I just think you should have left the other video up. The other problem, of course, is now the only record of that is going to be on John the Other or several other people's websites, right? Their YouTube channels. And that may not represent you all that well. So much like Jason Burns, if you're not familiar with him, thinking that you can somehow remove things once they've been put on the internet, it just doesn't work. And the only reflection that's left then of you is one that you may not be all that supportive of, or may not be that charitable of a reflection. And I know John the Other's video is up there, and I don't agree with him on many of the points that he made. But because your video is private, I tried to find it, and what I ended up finding was a few other people responding to it. So again, now the only record of that video is a bunch of other people maligning you, and it doesn't give you I think, the best opportunity to show your character. So I kind of wish you'd turn that video back public. She kind of corrected her use of the word creepy. I think the main thing that I would like to address in this video about her reflection video is something I didn't really address in my original critique of John the Other's video. And that is your definition or your understanding of the MGTOW movement. Because in your first video, you basically said, you men going your own way, don't blame the feminist movement. If we don't talk to you on the street or we don't want to get married at 17 like our grandmothers did, it's because there's lots of creepy men out there. Now, I understand you may have changed your position on this, but in your second video, you basically tried to find a definition of the men's going their own way, the MGTOW movement, that suited you, and not them. I mean, I appreciate your renewed stance. It sounds more to me like you're becoming an egalitarian. You may not be there yet, you may be becoming one, but I would not even label you as such because I would allow you to define yourself. And I think when it comes to the MGTOW movement and men's rights advocates and egalitarians and equalists and all of that, you need to allow people the privilege, the courtesy of defining their own position, right? So you said that, you found a definition that you liked, which talked about, becoming self-actualized and independent or something like that, and you liked that. But I don't think that's addressing or acknowledging or comprehending the basis behind the men's rights, the MGTOW movement. And I think that's really important. And you said you'd spend some time, you'd listen to the Sandman a little bit, and I actually listen to the Sandman quite a bit, and I disagree with him on many points. Again, reasonableness, and I think there's some unreasonable things in that movement. In particular, the generalization, the painting of all women with a broad brush. I remember one video, and again, I actually like a lot of the things that Sandman says, but I disagree with him on many points. He was in a discussion with a guy was talking about a guy who'd written in, and this guy owns a dealership, used car dealership maybe, or a dealership with his mother and his sister. I could be getting this a little bit off. And the guy was talking about his issues with women, but that he was in business with his sister, and that went really well, and they were all on the same page. And the Sandman was sort of saying, she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. You better watch out. She may get you. And I wholly disagree with this generalization of women. However, there was a lack of an acknowledgement on your part of what the MGTOW movement is actually about, and the reason that they're going their own way, and why they may actually blame the feminist movement for some of that. And that is that their claim, I'm not saying it's legitimate, I'm telling you their claim is that mate-seeking and marriage and child raising with women for men is a toxic environment. primarily because of the way women have been raised, possibly, and their expectations, and the way the social, civil, legal system is designed, that it's a toxic environment for men, and that they're better off to avoid it altogether. That's kind of, in a nutshell, my understanding of their movement, and that's something. Even if I'm off, even if I'm misguided, I think I've got the basic idea of it right. And they may even go as far as to say women themselves are toxic. Now, the independent thing is kind of interesting because I think, you'd mentioned that you've been on their website and it's just a bunch of female bashing. And I think you're maybe missing the point there. Again, I disagree with them in the generalization. But even the independence thing, I'm not even so sure that the MGTOW guys really want independence. I think ultimately, deep down, most of them, if they really could, they would love to find that four-leaf clover. That's what they would view it as, or a unicorn, as I've heard it said before. That rare woman who really is interested in being an equal partner and would not take advantage of the man legally if they were to have the unfortunate end result of their relationship be that they had to separate, to use, the power of the state that's there on mostly women's behalf to get, to sort of beat the man into submission and get maybe an unfair settlement in a divorce or an unfair child custody settlement and that sort of thing. And that they might not actually deep down really want that. I'm not so sure that it's about independence. It's more about saying, listen, I've witnessed too much out there. It is a toxic environment, and I'm not going to let myself fall prey to that. The other reason that it may seem like female bashing to you, but that it may be actually legitimate, in other words, hey, in your words, hey, if you want to go your own way, just go your own way. Why do you got to make so much noise? Why do you got to bash women? And I think the point would be much like, to a much lesser degree, of course, but if you're a feminist, or you're just a woman and you are trying to warn other women about the pickup artist movement, which you decry. You're doing it because you're trying to warn your fellow gender mates about this. You yourself may not be subject to it, privy. You can see the warning signs, and you're not going to let yourself be swooned into bed by one of these guys for the sole purpose of having sex. I would argue that there are actually pickup artists that are female as well, but your purpose in decrying them is to warn other women. And I think that's to a large degree what the men going their own way movement is about, is to alert other men that, hey, there is a toxic environment that exists out there. And I've been through a little bit of this myself, and I had to fight very hard, for instance, in a child custody battle, to have what I would consider my rights upheld, rights that I had enjoyed since my daughter was born. That there's no reason those should continue just because her mother and I were separating, that those shouldn't continue just because we are separating. Why should that change my legal rights as a father? And I also believe that my daughter deserved to have a father that would fight for those rights as well. But I have witnessed a lot of men going through a meat grinder. Boy, oh boy, it can be really awful. And so I'm not, again, I don't agree with the generalizing. I personally feel that I have married a unicorn. My current wife is someone who does view our partnership as equal. She's a fantastic woman, and this has been tested because we've already we weren't married at the time, but we were homeowners together. We were common law married for sure. We completely joined our lives together, and we had a pretty bitter separation. But she never sought anything beyond what I would consider would be an equitable dissolution of the common law marriage and division of assets and that sort of thing. And so I feel like I know what she would do in that event because it's actually happened. And so I don't like the generalization by the MGTOW movement of women to say that they're all toxic. However, I think it's important to at least acknowledge their actual beef and not to try to define the MGTOW movement by something that feels good to you. Certainly don't take their female bashing, if it's unfounded, to heart, and certainly don't give it credence. Don't give it any kind of legitimacy. Call it out, as you've called out the trolling comments on your videos and that sort of thing. Obviously that stuff's got no place, but I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a movement here, and I think there's some reasonable foundations beneath that movement. And as you said in your comments below your video, that hey, if you feel like your life without a woman is going to be the most positive and enjoyable for you, then you should do that. And I applaud you for making that comment, but I would sort of just urge you to understand the basis for the MGTOW movement. And ultimately, I think if you do that, and if we all do that, that can start a dialogue that maybe will start to slowly address what these men are saying about the toxicity of women. And it's actually not just men. There are women who acknowledge this toxicity as well, and discuss it. And so I think it's kind of important to at least, again, give them the courtesy of defining themselves and not just look for the sort of uncharitable position of looking for the worst in someone's argument and attacking that, right? Ultimately, I think from your follow-up video, it looks to me like you are a more approachable person than was at first thought by some of the things that you said in your first video, and that there is a dialogue that can take place here, which I think is important. And so I applaud you for that. I kind of wish you'd put that other video back up. As much as it may bother you and as much as you may get more of those trolling comments, I think it says a lot about your character if you can withstand that and allow that to stand on the record, and let your second video and any subsequent videos speak to your current state of mind and your level of character and self-reflection and that sort of thing. I know there was more that I wanted to say, but this video is already too long, so we'll let it go at that for now. Feel free, of course, to respond to this video in the comments section or with a video response if you like. I'd be happy to engage. Thanks everyone else for watching. Have a good day.